It was a sunny afternoon when he first walked in. A tall man, but bent from age. His clothes were torn, and his shoes were covered in dirt. His face was wrinkled, and his hair was long and tangled. He looked like he hadn't bathed in weeks. But the most unusual thing was his eyes. They were sharp, wise, and different from the rest of him. He walked into the grand lobby of the hotel, dragging his feet as if he didn't belong. The marble floors shined, and the sparkling chandelier above made everything look perfect. The staff were busy with their usual tasks, smiling, greeting, and making sure everything was spotless. But when they saw him, their smiles faded. A young waiter, James, was the first to notice. He stood at the entrance with a tray of drinks, his eyes narrowing as the man walked past. "Look at him," he muttered to himself. "What's he doing here?" The old man didn't pay attention. He just kept walking, moving slowly but confidently. He passed the front desk where the receptionist, a young woman named Laura, looked at him with disgust. "Oh no," she whispered. "Not him. Not again." He walked past her without a word and made his way to the lobby's luxurious seating area. He sat down on one of the velvet couches, sighing as he sank into the soft cushions. Laura whispered to James, "Someone needs to tell him to leave. He looks like he belongs in a street corner, not here." James nodded. He hated dealing with customers like this, but he knew it was part of the job. He walked over to the old man, clearing his throat. "Sir," he said politely but firmly, "I'm afraid you'll need to leave. This is a hotel, not a place for, well, people like you." The old man looked up, his sharp eyes meeting James's. For a moment, James froze. There was something about the way the man looked at him, something calm but powerful. It was almost as if he could see right through him. The old man opened his mouth slowly, speaking in a low voice that still carried weight. "This is my hotel," he said. James blinked. "Your hotel?" "Yes," the man said, leaning back, his voice steady. "I built this place. It's mine." James laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. "You built this hotel? Don't make me laugh, old man. This hotel is worth millions. You couldn't even afford the bathroom here." The old man didn't respond. He just closed his eyes and relaxed, as if nothing could bother him. Behind the front desk, Laura watched the scene unfold, her eyebrow raised. "Who is he?" she asked, clearly confused. "I don't know," James muttered. "But I don't think he's got any business here. I'm calling security." As James turned to leave, the old man spoke again, his voice calm and quiet. "Wait," he said. James stopped and turned around, annoyed. "What?" "Let's wait till tomorrow," the man said, his eyes glinting. "Then you'll see." James didn't understand. He rolled his eyes and walked away, but he couldn't shake the strange feeling that the man wasn't lying. There was something about him that felt different. The next day, the old man was back. And this time there was no doubt. He was sitting in the same place. His clothes were still dirty, but his posture was straighter. He didn't look like a beggar. He looked confident. Lara, who had been watching the man from behind the front desk, turned to James. "He's back. What should we do?" James shrugged. "He's not causing trouble, but this can't go on forever." Just then, the manager, Mr. Roberts, walked in. He was a tall man with a sharp suit, always looking polished and ready for business. He immediately spotted the old man sitting in the lobby. "Who is this?" Mr. Roberts asked, his tone sharp. Lara quickly explained. "He's been here for 2 days. He says he owns the hotel, but he's, well, not someone we would normally allow." Mr. Roberts frowned. "I'll deal with it." He walked over to the old man and stood in front of him. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The old man didn't move. He looked up at Mr. Roberts, his face still calm. "I don't need to leave. This is my hotel." Mr. Roberts's eyes narrowed. "I don't know who you are or what you're trying to prove, but I'm afraid you can't just sit here all day." The old man stood slowly, his movements deliberate. "You'll find out soon enough," he said softly, his eyes never leaving Mr. Roberts's. "Tomorrow, you'll see." And with that, he turned and walked out of the lobby, leaving behind a trail of confused whispers. Mr. Roberts stood still, staring at the door where the man had exited. Tomorrow, he muttered to himself. What did he mean by that? The old man had given them a warning, but no one had taken him seriously. They thought he was just a crazy old man. But deep down, everyone felt it. The strange, nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, the old man was telling the truth. Tomorrow, something was going to happen, and everyone would be there to see it. The next morning, the old man was back. But this time, things were different. The hotel staff had been talking about him all night. They couldn't stop whispering about his strange words. "This is my hotel. Who does he think he is?" James said to Laura as they cleaned the lobby. "No one is going to believe that." "I don't know, James," Laura replied, glancing nervously toward the door. "He looks so confident." James laughed. "Confidence doesn't pay the bills. He's probably just some crazy old man with no place to go." They both turned to see the old man walking into the lobby again. His clothes were still torn, his hair unkempt, and his shoes covered in dirt. But this time something felt different. There was a strange calmness to him, as if he knew something no one else did. He didn't sit on the couch today. Instead, he walked straight up to the front desk. The receptionist, Laura, looked up, startled by his presence. He stood there for a moment, and then, in a quiet voice, he said, "I'd like a room, please." Laura blinked, not sure what to say. "A room? Sir, I think you must be mistaken." The old man nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting this. "No, I'm not mistaken. I built this hotel. I'm asking for the room that's mine." "Built it?" Laura said, shaking her head. "You're confused. This hotel is a luxury hotel. We don't have rooms for people like you." The words stung. The old man stood still, his eyes locked onto hers. There was no anger in his gaze, just the calm of someone who knew something others didn't. Laura didn't know what to say. She glanced at James, who had just walked over, still wiping his hands on a rag. He saw the old man and immediately gave a sarcastic laugh. "Room? What room?" James said loudly. "You're lucky we don't call security on you. We don't need people like you here." The old man didn't respond. He didn't shout or get angry. He just stood there, his shoulders squared, as if he was waiting for something. Lara felt awkward. She wanted to tell the man to leave, but something inside her made her hesitate. Instead, she turned to James. "Maybe we should call Mr. Roberts. He'll know what to do." "Good idea," James said, rolling his eyes. "Let's see how he likes this guy." A few minutes later, Mr. Roberts, the manager, appeared. His face was stern, his steps quick. When he saw the old man standing at the front desk, he frowned. "Sir, I've asked you to leave," Mr. Roberts said coldly. "This is not the place for you." The old man didn't flinch. He simply said, "I'm not leaving." "Don't test me," Mr. Roberts snapped. "You'll be out of here if I have to call the police." The old man looked up at him, his eyes steady. "I built this hotel. It's mine." Roberts stepped closer, his voice lowering. "I don't know what you're trying to pull, but it's over. I'm calling security right now." The old man stood there, not moving, as if he had all the time in the world. His calmness seemed to confuse everyone around him. He didn't look like a man trying to cause trouble. He just looked peaceful. Roberts turned to walk away, but then something strange happened. The old man spoke again. "Tomorrow, you'll see." Mr. Roberts stopped in his tracks. He spun around, his eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" The old man simply repeated, "Tomorrow." Mr. Roberts stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "You're not worth my time." He turned and walked away, heading toward his office. But there was something in the air, something that felt different. The old man's words, his calmness, they weren't the usual ramblings of a madman. They carried weight. Later that day, when the hotel guests checked in, they noticed something unusual. The staff seemed tense, like they were waiting for something. James and Laura whispered about the old man, and as the day went on, people couldn't stop talking about him. Some of the staff laughed at his crazy claims. How could a man like that own this hotel? They asked each other. "He looks like he's homeless." but others weren't so sure. A few guests, hearing the whispers, began to ask questions. "Who is that man?" one of them asked, pointing toward the old man sitting in the lobby. "Why does everyone treat him like that?" "I don't know," Laura said, her voice uncertain. "He says he owns the hotel, but he looks like he's fallen on hard times." As the sun began to set, the old man sat quietly in the lobby waiting. No one else dared to approach him. The staff stayed away, and the guests whispered behind their backs. The old man's silence was almost as loud as the mocking words they had said to him. The next day, the old man wasn't in the lobby. His absence felt strange. The staff had gotten used to seeing him there, sitting in the corner, quietly watching the guests come and go. But today, the lobby was just quiet. James was cleaning the glass windows when he noticed something on the floor. It was an old, torn piece of paper. He picked it up and unfolded it. It was a photo, a faded black and white picture of a young man in a suit, standing next to the founder of the hotel. The young man in the picture looked remarkably like the old man who had been sitting in the lobby for the past few days. James stared at it for a long moment. He was sure it was the same person, but the photo was from decades ago. How could it be him? He turned the photo over. There was something written on the back, barely readable. "My brother Thomas, founder of the Grandview Hotel." James felt a chill run through him. He didn't know who Thomas was, but the name made him feel uneasy. The picture seemed too old to be of anyone connected to the hotel now. But why would the old man have it? Just then, Laura walked over and saw James holding the photo. She took a step closer, her eyes widening as she recognized the man in the photo. "Wait," Laura said slowly. That's him. The old man." James looked at her, puzzled. "Are you sure?" Laura nodded. "It has to be. But how could this be the same person? This picture is so old." James felt a knot in his stomach. He claims to own the hotel. Maybe he's telling the truth. Laura stared at him in disbelief. "Come on, James. You can't believe that. He's just a homeless man. How could he possibly own something like this?" "I don't know," James said quietly, still staring at the photo. "But maybe we're missing something." Meanwhile, in a small office at the back of the hotel, Ali, the young cleaner, was quietly sweeping the floor. He had noticed the old man a few times, and unlike the others, he didn't treat him like a nuisance. He saw the man as something different, something mysterious. As Ali moved through the back hallway, he noticed something odd. The office door was slightly ajar. Inside, he could hear voices. Curious, he tiptoed closer and peeked in. It was Mr. Roberts, the manager, speaking with someone on the phone. His voice was low, but Ali could hear the words clearly. "He's not fooling anyone. I've been through the hotel records, and there's no mention of any Thomas. It's all just a lie." Mr. Roberts paused, then spoke again. "We need to get rid of him. He's causing trouble." Ali's heart raced. He couldn't understand why the manager was so determined to get rid of the old man. What was the real story? He stepped back quietly, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping. As he left, he noticed a locked filing cabinet near the office. It was old, dusty, and looked untouched. The curiosity grew inside him. What was inside? That afternoon, Ali couldn't shake the thought of the locked cabinet. He knew it was wrong, but he had to find out what was hidden there. It wasn't just about the old man anymore. There was something bigger going on, something no one was telling him. As soon as the hotel was quiet, Ali snuck into the manager's office. He carefully unlocked the cabinet, his hands shaking with excitement. Inside, he found a pile of old records and dusty files. Most were from years ago, some even decades old, but one file stood out. It was labeled Grandview Hotel, Ownership Documents. Ali pulled it out, his heart pounding in his chest. He opened the folder carefully, scanning through the papers. At the very back was a document that caught his eye. It was a will. The name at the top of the page was Thomas Carlyle. He read it quickly. "If I die before my brother Richard Carlyle, the Grandview Hotel shall be passed to him as per my wishes." Ali froze. The old man's name wasn't Richard. It was Richard's brother Thomas. The document was real. The old man wasn't just some random beggar. He was the brother of the founder of the hotel. Ali quickly stuffed the file back into the cabinet and locked it again. He didn't know what to do with this information, but one thing was certain: the old man was telling the truth. Later that evening, the old man returned to the lobby, just as he had every day before. This time, he didn't sit quietly on the couch. He stood in the center of the room, facing the staff and guests who had been whispering about him for days. Lara, James, and the others watched him carefully. He didn't speak, but his presence seemed to fill the room. For the first time, they felt the weight of his silence. Mr. Roberts came out of his office and walked toward the old man. He was about to speak, but the old man raised a hand, stopping him. "I don't need your permission to be here," the old man said, his voice firm and calm. "This is my hotel, and tomorrow, you'll see why." The hotel lobby was quieter than usual. The staff couldn't stop talking about the old man, who he really was, and why he kept saying this was his hotel. But no one knew the truth. They had all treated him like he was a nobody. Now, it seemed they might have been wrong all along. James couldn't stop thinking about the photo he had found. The young man in the picture had looked so much like the old man. There was no way it was a coincidence. But how could the old man possibly be connected to this hotel? Laura, on the other hand, wasn't sure what to think. She had seen so many guests come and go, and she had learned to never trust someone who looked like they didn't belong. But something in the old man's eyes made her question everything. Was he really telling the truth? By the time the evening came, the tension in the air was thick. Everyone was waiting for something to happen. The guests were starting to notice the odd whispers. The staff was on edge, unsure of what they should do next. And then it happened. The old man entered the lobby again, just as the sun began to set. He walked slowly, but with purpose, toward the center of the room. His eyes were calm, but there was something behind them, something that made everyone stop and watch. Mr. Roberts was already there, pacing near the front desk. He had been expecting this moment, though he hadn't known when it would come. His face was set in a grim expression, ready to deal with the situation once and for all. "I've had enough of this," Mr. Roberts said, his voice hard. "You need to leave. Now." The old man didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at Mr. Roberts, his eyes unwavering. "I don't need to leave," the old man replied quietly. "This is my hotel." Mr. Roberts let out a short, humorless laugh. "This hotel belongs to me. I've worked for years to build this place, and I won't let some old man come in here and make ridiculous claims." The old man's eyes darkened, but his voice remained steady. "You don't understand. It was always meant to be mine." Just then, Ali appeared at the back of the lobby, his face pale. He had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the right time to reveal the truth. He walked slowly toward the front of the lobby, holding something in his hands. Ali approached Mr. Roberts and placed the folder he had found the day before on the desk. It was the file containing the ownership documents. The manager's eyes widened as he saw it. "This," Ali said, his voice shaky but strong, "is proof." He looked at the old man. "His name is Thomas Carlyle. He's the brother of Richard Carlyle, the man who founded this hotel." Mr. Roberts stared at the file, his mouth slightly open. He reached out, his hand trembling as he picked up the folder and opened it. The documents inside confirmed everything. This can't be right," Mr. Roberts muttered under his breath, his voice tight. I thought Richard's brother had disappeared years ago." The old man didn't say anything. He just stood there, his eyes calm but resolute. Ali stepped back and looked at the others. "We've all been treating him like he's nothing, but he's the one who built this place. This is his hotel." The words hit the staff like a punch to the gut. James's face turned pale, and Laura's eyes widened in disbelief. They had mocked him, laughed at him, and told him to leave. And now they were learning the truth. The man they had treated like trash was the one who owned everything. The old man, Thomas, looked around the room, his gaze sweeping over the staff and guests who had all judged him without knowing who he was. "I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came here to take back what is mine." Mr. Roberts was still holding the documents, his face pale. He had always thought of himself as the one in control, the one who owned the hotel. But now, he saw that everything was about to change. "You can't just take this hotel back," Mr. Roberts said, his voice shaking. "I've worked my entire life to build this place." Thomas's eyes never left him. "You've been here for years, yes. But this hotel was built on my brother's vision, and I'm here to make sure it stays true to that vision. I didn't want to take it from you, Roberts. But I see now that I have no choice." There was silence for a moment. The staff, the guests, and even Mr. Roberts stood frozen, trying to process everything. Then Thomas spoke again, his voice clear and strong. "Tomorrow, you'll see the changes I'm going to make. This hotel will be what it was meant to be." The guests who had been quietly watching the scene unfold began to murmur amongst themselves. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. The old man, no, Thomas Carlyle, wasn't just a homeless person. He was the rightful owner of the hotel. Mr. Roberts slowly sat down, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. He had spent so many years building his life around this hotel, and now it was slipping through his fingers. Later that night, in his small room, Thomas sat quietly, looking out at the city lights. He had spent years away, waiting for the right time to return. And now, it seemed that time had finally come. He wasn't angry or bitter. He was calm, knowing that tomorrow, everything would change. The hotel was his again. But it wasn't just about the hotel. It was about something deeper, something that had been lost along the way. A promise to his brother, a promise to himself. Tomorrow, everyone would see who he really was. The next morning arrived, and the hotel felt different. There was an eerie quiet in the air. The staff moved with unease, glancing nervously at the old man whenever they saw him. Thomas Carlyle was no longer just a strange, homeless figure. He was the rightful owner of the Grandview Hotel. The guests, too, seemed to sense the change. They had all heard the whispers from the night before, but now they saw the old man, walking through the lobby with a calm, dignified presence that sent a ripple of curiosity through everyone who saw him. Mr. Roberts was at the front desk, his face pale and tired. The night had been rough. He couldn't sleep, replaying the events over and over in his mind. How had this happened? How had the man he thought was a beggar become the owner of everything he had worked for? Roberts watched from behind the desk as Thomas walked past. The old man didn't even glance in his direction. He wasn't interested in making a scene. He was only here to take back what was rightfully his. The staff, still unsure of how to react, watched as Thomas approached the front desk. He stopped just a few feet away from Roberts, who was trying to compose himself. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his tie. "Good morning, Mr. Roberts," Thomas said, his voice steady and firm. "I'd like to discuss some changes." Mr. Roberts didn't speak immediately. He wasn't sure if he should even respond. But finally, he cleared his throat and said, "Changes? What kind of changes?" Thomas smiled slightly, though it wasn't a warm smile. It was more like the smile of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. "I think it's time for this hotel to return to its roots, to the legacy my brother and I built. The Grandview was meant to be a place of luxury and class, but somewhere along the way, it became just another business, another hotel among many." Mr. Roberts swallowed hard. "This hotel has been a success. It's been profitable. We've worked hard to keep it running, Thomas." Thomas's eyes narrowed slightly. "Success is not measured in money alone, Mr. Roberts. My brother and I envision something more, a place where people are treated with respect and dignity, where they don't have to worry about being judged by their appearance or their past." Roberts opened his mouth to argue, but Thomas raised his hand, silencing him. "I'm not here to take what's yours, Roberts," Thomas said calmly. "I'm here to fix what you've broken." Later that morning, Thomas gathered the staff in the hotel's grand meeting room. They had all been informed of the changes, but none of them truly understood what was about to unfold. Thomas stood at the front of the room, his back straight, his gaze firm and unwavering. "I've seen how you've all treated me," Thomas began, his voice low and strong. "And I understand. I've looked like a man with nothing. But now you know who I am. And I will not stand by while this hotel becomes something it was never meant to be." The staff exchanged nervous glances. No one had ever seen the old man speak like this. There was a power to his words that couldn't be ignored, I'm not just taking control for myself, Thomas continued. I'm taking it back for my brother, Richard Carlyle. He built this hotel with a dream, and I'm here to make sure that dream is fulfilled. The Grandview Hotel will be a place where people are treated with kindness, where they are valued for who they are, not for what they have. James, who had been one of the most vocal critics of the old man, couldn't help but feel the weight of Thomas's words. He had always thought of the hotel as just a place to work, a job to pay the bills. But now, listening to Thomas speak, he realized there was so much more at stake. Laura, who had once doubted Thomas, now found herself moved by his words. There was something in his tone that made her believe him, something that spoke of a man who had lived through hardships but never lost his sense of purpose. But it was Ali who was the most affected. He had always believed in the old man. And now, standing in the room full of staff, he saw the truth of what Thomas was saying. That afternoon, Thomas met with Mr. Roberts in the hotel's private office. The air was thick with tension. I want you to know that I'm not here to make enemies, Thomas said quietly. But I also won't let you continue running this hotel as you have been. I've seen the way you treat people, the way you manipulate them. That ends now. Roberts stood behind his desk, his hands clenched into fists. You don't know what it takes to run a hotel like this. You don't know what I've had to do to keep this place running. Thomas's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. I understand what it takes, but you've lost sight of what truly matters. This hotel isn't just about profits. It's about people. And it's time you remembered that. Roberts glared at him, but he didn't argue. Deep down, he knew Thomas was right. Everything had changed, and it was no longer in his control. As the sun set that evening, the staff began to notice the first signs of change. The atmosphere in the hotel was different. It wasn't just the old man's presence, it was the shift in how the hotel was being run. There was a new respect in the air, a feeling that things were moving in a better direction. For the first time in a long time, the Grandview Hotel felt like it had a heart again. Thomas watched from a distance, his eyes scanning the lobby. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be resistance, and not everyone would accept the changes right away. But he was determined to honor his brother's legacy, no matter what. He had come back to make things right. And nothing would stop him. The days following Thomas's speech brought a wave of uncertainty throughout the hotel. The staff was divided. Some were relieved, others were angry. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The luxury and prestige of the Grandview Hotel had always come with a sense of cold formality. Now, it was different. People were starting to treat each other with more kindness, more respect. But change was never easy, especially when the established order was being turned upside down. Mr. Roberts felt the shift most keenly. He had been running the hotel for years, treating it like his personal empire. Now, it felt as though his world was slipping away. He wasn't just losing control of the hotel. He was losing his position, his power. And for someone like Roberts, that was the hardest thing to accept. Thomas, however, was calm. His presence was steady, like a mountain standing tall against a storm. He moved through the hotel like it was his home. He wasn't focused on the small victories. He was looking ahead to the bigger picture. He was determined to restore the Grandview to its former glory, not just in terms of luxury, but in its heart, its soul. And he knew that wouldn't come easily. That afternoon, Thomas met with a few key staff members to discuss the changes he planned to make. He wanted to restore the original purpose of the Grandview Hotel, but he also knew there were practical challenges ahead. He couldn't just snap his fingers and make it all perfect again. We're going to focus on quality, Thomas said, sitting at the long table in the meeting room. But not just in terms of service. I want every guest who walks through these doors to feel like they're part of something special. The Grandview isn't just a place to stay, it's an experience. The staff listened intently, and for the first time, they could see the vision behind his words. They had always seen the hotel as a business, a means to an end. But Thomas spoke with such passion that they began to understand what he meant. He wasn't just trying to run a hotel, he was trying to build something lasting. Laura, who had been skeptical of him at first, nodded. It sounds like you really want to bring back the Grandview's legacy, she said. But we can't just undo years of mismanagement. It's going to take time. Thomas smiled, his eyes warm but determined. I know, and I'm not expecting miracles overnight. But I do know this. The first step is creating a space where people are treated with dignity. Later that evening, Thomas sat alone in the hotel's grand lobby, watching the guests come and go. It felt like home again, even though there was so much work left to do. He knew that many of the hotel's loyal guests would resist the changes. People were creatures of habit after all. Just then, James walked into the lobby, looking hesitant. He had been one of the loudest voices against Thomas in the beginning, but now he was different. The transformation in the hotel was undeniable, and it had begun to make him question his own beliefs. Mr. Carlyle, James said, his voice cautious but respectful. I wanted to apologize. Thomas looked up, surprised. Apologize? For what? For everything, James said, rubbing the back of his neck. For doubting you. For assuming you were just some old man with no purpose. I didn't realize what you were trying to do here. Thomas nodded slowly, appreciating the sincerity in James's words. Thank you, James. It means a lot to me that you understand. This isn't about me. It's about all of us. The Grandview Hotel is a place where people should feel welcome, not judged. James smiled sheepishly. I've been working here for years, but I've never really thought about it like that. It's always been about getting through the day. I guess I never realized what this place could be until now. It's never too late to change, Thomas replied, his voice filled with quiet strength. We're all learning together. Meanwhile, in the manager's office, Mr. Roberts was grappling with the reality of his situation. His hands shook as he stared at a stack of papers on his desk. He had already begun to prepare his exit strategy, but deep down, he knew it wasn't just about leaving the hotel. It was about losing everything he had built for himself. The hotel had been his life, his legacy, or at least he had thought it was. But now, as Thomas took control, Roberts could feel his foundation crumbling. He hadn't expected the old man to have this much influence. He hadn't expected him to be so. Right. The changes he was making were unsettling, yes, but they were also powerful. It was as though Roberts had spent all these years chasing after the wrong things. And now, standing at the edge of losing it all, he realized the truth. Thomas's vision for the hotel wasn't just a dream. It was a way to restore what had been lost. But could Roberts ever accept it? Could he let go of his own ambitions and step aside for a man who had been nothing more than a shadow in the past? The next day, the hotel staff was called to another meeting. This time, it wasn't about policies or plans for the future. It was about the truth. Thomas stood at the front of the room, his eyes scanning the group. I know there are people here who are uncertain about the changes we're making, he began. I understand. Change is hard. But I promise you, it's for the best. Not just for the hotel, but for all of us. There was a moment of silence. Some of the staff members still seemed unsure, but others nodded. They were starting to see the bigger picture, and though it was uncomfortable, they were beginning to understand Thomas's vision. Thomas continued, the Grandview Hotel has always been about people. My brother Richard and I built this place because we believed in something. We believed in providing a safe space where people could come and feel at home. That's what I want to restore, but I need your help. The staff's attention was now fully focused on him. I can't do this alone, Thomas said, his voice steady. But together, we can rebuild the Grandview into something truly special. As he finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then, slowly, one by one, the staff members began to nod. The tension was still there, but it was easing. The changes were coming, and they were going to be part of them.